Welcome to Real Life Renos, the podcast. My name is Karen Brown. I'm your host. And today we are continuing our series on accessible housing with Ron Wickman, who's an architect specializing in barrier-free design. And he joins us from Edmonton. Welcome, Ron.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
Our previous two podcasts, at the end of this little series, our mini podcasts, I guess we'll call them, looked at specific renovations to a home's entry and the vertical movement within a home. In the last of our three focuses, we're going to look at a really important room that everybody will need to use, the bathroom. Tell us the issues and help us work through the solutions, Ron.
Sure. The first thing I'll say is that if I could change the building culture in one way, it would be to get the buy-in to build bathrooms like wet rooms. So we'll get into definitions of that, or what I mean by that. But even more so than the no-step entrance, the vertical access, if the hardest thing to deal with in renovations especially is getting the bathroom to get to a state where somebody with a disability can use it. So bathrooms have just historically been built relatively small, to accommodate somebody who is standing. So as soon as you find yourself with a mobility aid like a wheelchair, walker, or whatever else you might be using, the existing bathroom just will be a huge challenge. And to make a bathroom bigger can be very, very difficult. You might end up losing one of your bedrooms in the house. You might have to add on, but it's definitely the one thing that I would say is going to make or break your ability to renovate for sure. So in new housing, if we can just get builders to start building bathrooms to be like wet rooms, and they don't have to be overly large. They just have to be built like a wet room. And I guess by that, I do mean literally waterproofing the room. So the whole floor is waterproof. The walls are waterproof, and you can tile. Generally, you would tile the floor, you would tile the walls. And there you are. You have it done. And when it comes to having a shower area, you can then design the floor so everything just slopes to a drain. So you eliminate any kind of curb or step within the bathroom itself that somebody would have to step over, which is what we're most commonly used to here in Canada. You would just be able to walk right in if you wanted to. This wet room area would be big enough that you could stand in it and shower. You could sit on a bench if you were somebody who had just trouble standing for a long period of time. And then you could even wheel right in a shower wheelchair, and even have a caregiver or an attendant help you in the shower. So this kind of thing, once you've done it, your future renovations just become so much easier. They would be basically cosmetic. Maybe you just get tired of your tile pattern that you created and you put new tiles in or something like that. But the room will forever be adaptable to whatever needs you have in the future.
It can get wet no matter what part of it. It won't matter at all. So wet rooms are very common in Asian cultures. They just have not really translated here in quite the same way. But you're right, they are abundantly practical.
Yeah, and for the most part, it hasn't been as popular here because in Canada and North America we build with wood. So we build wood floors, and we don't want our wood floors to get wet. And I know we put vinyl or whatever we put on top, but even tile, with the grout, the water can get through the grout and then damage our wood floors. So we've always been afraid of doing the wet room because we build in wood. And in Asia, Europe, and many other parts of the world, they use concrete, generally speaking, to build with. So they're definitely not nervous about water like we are. Right. And in my history of doing the shower areas, I've been doing homes for people who use wheelchairs for, again, 30 years. Yeah, it was a real big problem. The technology wasn't there. The understanding wasn't there. So often you would just go, okay, let's build a bathroom with a curbless shower, and we'll put the tile over the floor. And then 5 years later, the homeowner's going, yeah, we got problems, I think, because my floor seems kind of saggy and weird, and the tile's breaking up, and then you pull the tile off the floor, and the wood is all damaged, and there's structural issues and all of that, right? So in my work that I do with the Workers' Compensation Board, for example, they actually had a policy that if a homeowner, the injured worker, wanted to have tile on their floor, they would have to sign a waiver that alleviated WCB of any responsibility for damage to the floor. So that's about 30 years ago. Today, the technology is incredibly good, and you do a rubber membrane on the floor. All of the things I talked about in the no-step entrance, where we just protect the wood from water, you can do in a wet room, bathroom. And in essence, we're really just kind of using flat roof building technology to put on the floor of a bathroom. So everything was completely waterproof, and everything just slopes to a drain, and it's easy to keep clean. It can look as fantastic as you want it to look, depending on your budget and your style preference. It can be anything you want. And having said that, though, I just want to make mention of the fact that historically, accessible design started based on kind of what we'd call a medical model. And that's still strong on lots of people's minds. So they see accessibility in bathrooms in particular as a kind of, when they're accessible, it's kind of a medical thing. It looks institutional. It looks like a hospital setting. And so people have that on their minds. And I get that all the time when I have somebody who was, let's say, injured in a car accident, and since the car accident, they've spent their time in a hospital and they haven't moved back home yet. And almost always the first thing they'll say to me is, well, in my new bathroom at home, my renovated bathroom, it can't look like what the bathroom looks like here in the hospital. And I said, well, it won't. It'll look like however you could if you wanted it to, but it could look like anything you want, right? Just pick your tile. But it's hard for people to visualize what that might look like, right? Because again, all they're basing their thoughts on are what they see, and that's usually in the hospital. So in the bathroom, a lot of people have this vision that the bathroom has these very institutional looking grab bars, these sort of hospital-like sinks, these stainless steel toilets, like just kind of like not a very pleasant space to be in. So that's the biggest thing I find that I have to convince clients and other people, builders even, that again, we're not talking about anything unusual here, except we're just building the floor of the bathroom so it's all basically one level, and it all slopes to a drain. So as soon as you can get your head around that, then the bathroom can look like whatever you want it to look like. So we have to get over this idea that we're just focusing on the medical model, or just safety, and we can bring aesthetics into our design thinking when we're doing a bathroom.
Anybody who has traveled pretty much anywhere outside of Canada or the US, in Europe, this kind of shower is what they build. It's standard. And you can, whether you travel there in person or you travel through Google, European bathrooms, these are the pictures that you will see, and they are absolutely gorgeous. I should put a couple of them in our show notes just to show people. I mean, the design aesthetic may or may not be what you would choose for yourself, but you will see that they are just regular looking bathrooms that are beautifully done. And grab bars don't have to look institutional.
You remind me too of something, just a recent experience I had in my travel. Just in Alberta, I have to travel a lot for my work, and I stayed at a hotel in Calgary, which was by the airport. And one thing I've really noticed is how the hotel airports in particular have really ramped up their aesthetics. Like, they really are making their spaces much nicer for the travelers that might have to stay overnight and want to be near the airport. So it just was a convenient location for me. And I stayed in a kind of boutique-y hotel, and they serve you sort of fancy breakfast in the morning, but my hotel room was really, really nice. And it wasn't quite, I wouldn't say it was like a wet room, but, it had like glass doors, and it was tiled, and it was like beautifully done. And so if you want to look at what a wet room could look like, if you have the benefit of traveling a little bit, you'll start to recognize it in the hotel industry. Like they've all sort of collectively have raised the level of what a standard room, affordable room, could look like. And so we just have to get that to translate into our single family residential housing as well.
Right. What kind of space is generally required in order to create a totally accessible bathroom?
The one really key number that people should keep in mind is the 5 foot or 1,500 millimeter turning circle. So if you ever look at floor plans of somebody that is saying that their house plan design is wheelchair accessible, they'll show these turning circles all over the place, right? And so you'll see it in the bathroom, and that's a very good guide, and it's become very much the number that we use as a standard. The reality is, it is just a number. My dad, in his manual wheelchair, could have easily turned in 1,200 millimeters or 4 feet of space, and somebody in a larger power chair probably could use 1,800 millimeters or whatever that is in feet and inches. So even in our national building code, I just was in a meeting yesterday, and we're going to be raising that number is going to be going up from 1,500 millimeters to 1,700 millimeters. So that's a recognition that more and more people are using different types of wheelchairs, and a lot more power wheelchairs are coming out. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, having said all of that, in a bathroom, you're not going to be showering with a power wheelchair.
Right.
Hopefully.
Well, that would be challenging.
It's not a good idea. Let's put it that way.
All right. You got to transfer.
So if you're in a power wheelchair, you'd likely get transferred into what they call a shower wheelchair. And so the shower wheelchair is much like a manual wheelchair. So again, you can go back to the 5 foot turning circle. So in a perfect scenario, I'll always design my bathrooms with a space that can accommodate that 5 foot turning circle within it. So that would become my shower area. If I have the space, if I'm building a more luxurious home, or working on a more luxurious style home, that 5 foot turning circle will be on its own. It'll be the shower, and then everything else will be outside of that. In my more affordable housing, which is what I more commonly do, that 5 foot turning circle becomes the only 5 foot turning space that could accommodate somebody in a wheelchair. So you enter the bathroom, you use the shower space to turn around in, you shut the bathroom door, and you gain access to the toilet or the sink as well. So typically the smallest bathroom that we do is 5 feet by 8 feet, which accommodates a bathtub, toilet, and a sink. And that's very common in houses from the 50s to today. We do see a lot more homes now with en suites and so on, but your typical family bathroom will be this style, right? This 5 foot by 8 foot. And you can renovate that. You could take the tub out and make that a shower area. But it is very tight. It's only in the smallest wheelchair can somebody sort of navigate in a space like that.
Right. So it's doable.
So it's doable, but it's not recommended. And for a lot of people, it doesn't work because of just the size they are and the size of wheelchair that they use. So again, if you use that 5 foot turning circle as your guide, you can start to lay out the bathroom space that way. So I generally will say that you should think about something that's in the order of 10 feet by 10 feet. So 100 square feet would be the kind of space that would allow you to do a fairly nice and generous bathroom with not only the shower area, but a bathtub as well. So you could have the shower area, the bathtub, and a toilet and a sink in 100 square feet.
Right. Because quite often there are couples, and one of them may require the curbless shower and the other may enjoy a bath. And so you want all of those functions. And particularly if somebody is trying to create a bathroom on a main floor, if they've got a 2-story house and they want to move the bedroom and the bathroom, all the functions to the main floor, they might have to scoop some room from a laundry room or a storage room or a dining room, something like that, to create that 10 by 10 space.
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
And this might be a good time too to also mention, because I get asked this a lot too, and I'm sure some of our listeners would be thinking, what about those bathtubs with doors?
Yeah.
And what I'll say about that is the bathtub with a door is okay for somebody with a mobility issue, like a senior, somebody who's older, maybe a bit more frail, and just has trouble stepping over into a bathtub, is nervous about falls and that sort of thing. I myself, I do not recommend it for anybody who uses a wheelchair. So if it kind of goes back to this, the idea we talked about in the vertical circulation episode, the chair lift versus the stair platform lift. So I do not recommend a bathtub with a door for somebody who is in a wheelchair and cannot use their legs.
Right.
So I don't know how you can really transfer, like open the door, transfer into the tub, and get in and out when you can't use your legs at all. So that's important for somebody to recognize. And the technology with the tubs has advanced. Always the biggest complaint has not been so much about accessibility, but the fact that you have to get in the bathtub so that it can fill up with water. Right. So you're kind of sitting there, likely without any clothes on, right, waiting for the tub to fill up, and then you're doing the same thing when the tub's emptying. So you can't open the door until there's no water in the tub anymore. So a lot of people complain that they're wet and cold by the time they can actually exit the tub. So these are things I just want to mention because sometimes people think, well, that's great, we can just take out the tub in our existing bathroom and put in this tub and we're good to go. And I would be careful about that. I think a lot about that one.
I would like to add to that conversation just a little bit by saying that I think a lot of people might choose that option as a bit of a stopgap because they think, okay, I've got this issue now, so we'll just avoid any major bathroom renovations and we'll get this tub with a door. People need to start thinking longer term and looking down the road with whatever their challenges may be. And you may be throwing good money after bad to do that. You may as well do it so that whatever happens, your lifestyle is accommodated and your safety is something that is more uppermost in your mind for the long term. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of the tubs with the doors. Now, I've had people say, but they drain in 15 seconds. Well, that's great. Like you pointed out, you still have to sit there while it fills up, and they are only good for certain people in the population. Why take a little bite? Just do it and have the bathroom that you are going to need for the long term because you are spending your hard-earned money. Yeah.
And I would say I'm going to say a very general thing here, so I'm not sort of attacking the building industry, but the building industry more than the design industry is inclined to do whatever the client asks for. Those of us in the design world might get you to double think what you're saying or wanting. So, given what you just said about the tub, when I have a client that feels very strongly that they do want this tub with the door, I'll always highly recommend and design the space so that a shower could be there as well. So my thinking is that you'll probably grow out of the tub, right, and you'll get to a point where you can't use it anymore, but you won't have to worry about it because you got the drain in the floor and you've got plumbing in the wall, and you can make that a shower space quite easily. Because again, you usually need space around the tub just to enter and exit the tub anyway. So you're just adding an extra drain in the floor and some extra rough-in plumbing at the very least, and you've kind of created this future proofing for your house. And most of my clients don't argue with me on that. And again, a very good builder will point that out to a client as well. But a lot of builders, they just want to get on with it, and they'll just say, okay, if that's what you want, I'll give it to you, right? And they don't necessarily do as much research into the pluses and minuses of the products, and that's why you do hire people like myself and yourself as consultants to help you weigh the pluses and minuses of all these areas and features.
One thing that I tell people when their homes are being renovated, even if they're building brand new, it is so beneficial to go in there rather regularly and take pictures so that you know where everything is behind the walls. And I'm thinking in particular of backing, because if you ever want to put up grab bars, you cannot be putting them into drywall. You need to know that there's something there that they can go into. And I think also of a mutual friend of ours, Ron, who was building her accessible bathroom, and the contractor put backing in her shower, but only down to about a foot above the ground level. And then when her shower seat came, that third bracket went below the 1 foot level. So they had to go to the outside of the bathroom, cut a hole in the drywall, finish putting the backing on. Like, people need to plan for the future. So one thing that homeowners, I always encourage them to do, tell your contractor that you want backing behind the walls all the way around your bathroom so that you can put a grab bar in wherever you might need it to be. And if you have the opportunity to take pictures before the wall gets closed up, take those pictures so that you know exactly what's behind those walls.
Yeah, that's a great idea. It's interesting that you mentioned that too, because just last week I was at a new client of mine. I was at their house, and their daughter has some physical disabilities, and they redid their ensuite to have a curbless shower area. And what I really loved about their story was that he actually, for the most part, the dad, who's not a builder, basically built the shower area. So he's sort of like the epitome of what I've been talking about, is like, you have to sometimes stretch yourself and learn for yourself and do your own research. And that's exactly what he did. Right. And just along the lines of what you're saying about the backing, he said, yeah, we put backing for future grab bars, for our daughter, because she's going to grow. She's only 10 right now. Right.
Right.
And I said, oh, okay, so your walls are all tiled. So do you know where that backing is? And he goes, oh yeah, I did the drawings. Like, I took pictures. I know exactly where all the backing is. So what's been interesting in this day and age, 2023, well, actually from 2020 to now, costs of various items like wood and plywood in particular is just escalated to like, sometimes plywood is more expensive than titanium. I think it's crazy how expensive it is. So builders are, in a very positive way, they're always looking for ways to build cost effectively.
Right.
So I have lately been talking with a lot of builders who are saying, Ron, is there any way we can do this without going floor to ceiling with the plywood? And I went, yeah, but isn't it just easier? And they would always say, yeah, it is easier, but the plywood is just so expensive right now that it's actually more cost effective to start cutting the wood and doing these extra sort of construction techniques so that still you can have like a wall that's ready to put tile on, right? Because if you put plywood only on a certain part of the wall, then you got to have strapping and so on. And I'm like, so the labor doesn't even come close to the cost of the lumber. And they're going, right now, yeah, that's the problem. So it's really interesting in working in this market, because you're just look at different ways to and then I think the market will get to a point where it'll just be easier to put the plywood, back floor to ceiling. But that's a good example that you mentioned about, because I would often say, yeah, you can be, maybe a foot and a half above the floor without backing, because what are you going to need there, right? But you're right, a flip down shower seat may have that bottom bracket that needs it. So
That's right.
you really have, yeah, I guess the lesson is you really have to think this through. And that is hard when you don't know what the future holds, right?
That's right.
but these are all lessons that I hopefully people are getting from this podcast, is that they have to really think this stuff through as much as they can, right?
Right.
And not always rely on the expertise of others. Like, and I would say that even of myself, like don't always take whatever I say as the end all be all, because for me, I just learned something new about stair platform lifts yesterday.
Right.
And I've been at this a long time. So I'll never say that I'm the person that knows all, right? And I can just sort of coast the rest of my career and just work off of what I've learned. I'm just constantly learning myself.
And people should not only consult with people in the trades or people like you or myself, but consult with an occupational therapist or their own doctors if they're dealing with some sort of a condition that is going to progress. Talk to them about what that might look like 10 years down the road, 15, 20 years down the road, so that when they're doing this kind of remodeling or building, they can accommodate that right from the get-go, and they won't have to go back and do it again and incur that extra cost.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, again, that's why I'll go back to this idea of the wet room, because once you've done that, 90% of your bathroom is good to go. And so,
right.
One thing we haven't really talked much about is counters and sinks in the bathroom. But it at the end of the day, if the bathroom is big enough and has the curbless shower area, if you have to raise or lower a sink for whatever reason, that's not really the end of the world. That's not too terribly hard to do.
Same with the toilet.
And same with the toilet. You can always change out. I do that frequently. Somebody, they have your regular height toilet, which is about, maybe 15 inches, and they need something that's about 18 inches. You take one toilet out and you put the new toilet in. And that's not really labor intensive. It's very cost effective. So it's the space that is important. Create the space that's, kind of big enough to make this all work.
Now, you use the term curbless showers. This is something I definitely want to bring forward, because when homeowners are talking with builders, there are all kinds of terms that are applied to these kinds of showers, and they have a different meaning to different people. So a curbless shower can also be known as a roll-in shower, a Euro shower, a step-free shower, a no-step shower. You hear all of them. We are talking about exactly the same thing. So make sure that when you're talking to your contractor or designer or whomever about this, that you start off understanding that this is what the term I'm using actually means. This is what I want.
Yeah, and a lot of times what I'll do too for the especially the sub trades and the builders, for their benefit mostly, I'll say things like curbless wheel-in shower.
Oh, okay. Can't get any more clear than that.
Wheelchair accessible shower. And I know fellow advocates and activists that I talk to talk about the importance of language. And I go, I know I'm not using language that you prefer, but I'm being very, very blunt and to the point for a trade that just doesn't have the experience and hasn't sat around the table and talked about, should we say accessible or universal or inclusive? And, they just don't have those benefits. They just go, this is a shower unit and I'm going to install it, or, I'm going to build this shower with a curb, and that's that. That's the way everybody does it. So if you say curbless, they don't quite know what that means all the time. So
that's right.
They'll still build it with a curb. It just won't be as big as what they're used to.
And then you still don't have the shower you want.
That's right. To me, that's curbless. And no, curbless is like no curb. And what do you mean by that? And then, you'll say, well, like, even if you say it's wheelchair accessible, they'll go, well, can't you just do like a little ramp over the curb? No, you can't really, right? And so no matter what you say, I guess it's difficult. And this is something that we should talk about too. That's really, really important, is the fact that in a bathroom there are many, many different trades working in the same space. So you have your plumber, you have your the way the floor is framed. So you have people who are doing the woodworking and the framing. You have the plumbers, you have the electrician, the people doing the tile work. So all of these people have to be on the same page. And that's where you really need a good general contractor or, site foreman to make sure that they're always consistently saying the same message to everybody. And so in new house construction, what I'll always do and design is a floor system. So whether that's the main floor or the second floor, if it's a 2-story house, is I'll do the joist space in the bathrooms so that they're actually smaller and lower than the rest of the floor level. So let's say I use 12-inch floor joists for the floor system. I would use 9-inch floor joists where the bathroom is. And then that there's a 3-inch difference. And then we would fill in the bathroom space so that everything then slopes. And generally I would slope from the door getting into the bathroom, slope from the door to the drain. And that allows me then to easily do a curbless shower or no step shower or wheel-in shower, whatever we want to call it. In renovations, that can get a little trickier because it can be hard to start cutting out parts of the floor and putting in smaller joists. There's just, there's more labor involved in that. So we're always looking for economical and effective ways to do the curbless shower in a renovation that just makes it a bit more challenging than when you're doing new construction, which again just goes back to the point, if everybody just started doing these showers and these bathrooms like wet rooms, then that's one thing we never have to worry about in the future.
And what's the slope you want in the curbless shower to the drain?
Well, I use something that's similar to a flat roof slope, which is 1/4 inch to a foot. So it's very, very gentle.
Okay.
And, what I found, again, seems simple enough when I'm drawing it up and, thinking about it in my head. So I'm not the guy that's actually doing the construction, but they come back to me and they go, if the drain is here and the door is there, I've at 1/4 inch to a foot, by the time I get from the drain to the door, I'm like 2 inches above the drain. So now I've got like a 2-inch difference at the door from the bathroom floor to, let's say, the bedroom floor, if it's an ensuite. So then you have to really start thinking it through. And this is, again, what I'm talking about with renovations, right? That 2 inches is easy to deal with when you're building a new home and doing the floor system, as I just earlier explained. So yeah, with renovations, we're always looking at different ways to address and deal with the location of the drain in the shower area. There's a product out there, and again, we're not trying to support or promote any company out there, but one of your more well-known companies that do the curbless showers is called Schluter, and they recently introduced what they call the trench drain. And this is something important to mention because a lot of people do get confused when they research the trench drain. And the trench drain effectively allows you to do a floor with one slope. So there still is a central drain, but the whole floor system drains to the trench. And then within the trench itself, it then drains to a central drain, which is underneath a grate. So a trench drain looks much like you'd see in an underground parking. At the bottom of underground parking, there's that big trench that catches all the water that's coming down their driveway.
And they're usually against a wall of a shower instead of in the center.
That's right.
I'm a big fan of trench drains. Yeah,
and those trench drains are great. And again, in new construction, if you think about a bathroom that's like a sort of longer rectangular bathroom, the door's at one end and the trench drain's at the far other end, then everything just slopes right from the door to the drain. And then you can use large format tiles too. And that's where Schluter has addressed people's concerns about aesthetics. So now you can have like 12-inch by 24-inch tiles on your whole floor system, and you can make it look very, very luxurious and aesthetically pleasing, and have this beautiful floor system. And the trench drains are quite attractive as well. So that works really well. And, so I started in my renovation work, I started saying, well, let's just do trench drains because they're so much better. But what I found is in renovation work, because of the sloping and the inability to sort of dig into the floor system, all of a sudden the trench drain becomes a little bit more difficult, because it's at one end, right? And then you still have to get that slope. So I've been in my renovations, I've been saying, well, we really should do the central drain, because you can keep your overall floor level lower. And you can get covers. You can get specialty metal covers for the circular drain, or you can even get a square one and then just sort of cover it with tile. So it looks like part of the tile floor. So again, the industry, I guess my point is the industry is taking note of people's desire to have this all look really, really nice, right? And so they're keeping that in mind,
Right.
with all of this. But these are some of the challenges that I've learned in the last 3 years when the trench drain started becoming more and more popular. And that's really coming from the United States, where again, the population of people in the United States over 65 is I think 70 million or something like that. So I mean that's higher than the population of all of Canada. So people say, well, why don't you do more curbless showers in Alberta? And I'm going, well, we're at like 4 million people in Alberta, and and maybe 10% are over 65. So we just don't have the same market for it. And the same demand then, right? So it's a little slower to reach where we are. It might be becoming more and more popular in Ontario, where the population is a bit higher.
I want to add one note about a circular drain for people who use shower chairs in particular, and that is that a circular drain in the traditional center of the shower can mean that you won't have all four wheels of your shower chair on the floor all the time. That can be a little bit on the dangerous side. So safety is important, and you want to mitigate that. And maybe the way to do that is to get the cover that you spoke of, or the tile piece that lets the water drain. But just be aware of that. The circular drain may not be a solution for you if you use a shower chair, just from a safety perspective.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I'm thinking too, going back 20 years or more, when I started doing and working on these shower areas without curbs, the trades were so nervous about water getting outside of the shower area and then kind of pooling outside of the shower area that they would exaggerate the slopes in the shower, which made it really, really difficult and not very safe for people in their wheelchairs. Even standing in the shower became a bit of an issue. So with the new waterproofing systems, and I mentioned Schluter as one of them, but there's a few others out there. It's given the trades much more confidence that you can do these low slopes and still very much protect your wood substructure from any water issues.
Right. Weedy is another company that a contractor that I work with prefers. So I'll link to both of those companies in the show notes. And again, we're not sponsored by anybody, so do your research. And if you and your contractor find a company that provides a product that will work for you, brilliant. Let's talk.
Yeah, and sorry, just to add to that, because that's a great point. I find that the contractors I've worked with that do a lot of these shower areas, they've actually found themselves using sort of a mix and match. So they might use like a weedy shower base, but Schluter wall system, and so they've become so sophisticated and experienced in what they're doing that they know the benefits of each and every supplier of product, and that's great, right? So if you can find a contractor like that, then
perfect.
You're really in a good place.
Yeah. Let's touch on price just a little bit. What would a person look to spend roughly? And again, this is June of 2023, so prices as of this point in time. Let's talk about a wet room. Let's talk about a curbless shower. What kind of pricing would people look at?
In new house construction, I talked about this in terms of the no-step entrance and the extra costs related to having that no-step entrance. The discussion around the shower areas and the wet room is quite similar in that sense. So again, builders that I've worked with on several occasions, they'll always tell me the first time they do it is more expensive. So they'll say, and one good example is a duplex I worked on about 5 or 6 years ago, and they did a main floor bathroom on one side with just a kind of store-bought shower unit, like a fiberglass shower unit, and then they did the other bathroom as a wet room with all tiles and everything. So I asked the contractor, what was the cost difference between these two bathrooms? And he said, and again, I have to be careful about this because it does depend on the tiles you pick and so on.
Right.
But they did go with a bit of a higher end tile. But he said it was about $4,000 more to do the wet room concept. And he's going, well, the shower unit was less expensive than doing tile work all around. We could have brought that cost down more if we picked a less expensive tile, but we're targeting a certain market. So you are looking at some added costs because buying a fiberglass shower unit is less expensive than tiling the floor and wall and waterproofing it. But it's fair to say, a couple $1,000s probably to do one over the other. But to have to redo a bathroom at some point in the future is sometimes not even doable, or $30,000 or $40,000. So a lot. Again, that goes back to the point that we're both making: is people should do their research and think a little bit more about their future needs. And if somehow we could get it into the culture that the buying public would see or would demand this kind of thing, you could almost make it a selling feature of your house. We're not there yet, but I see a day when that would be something where you could say, hey, I have a house with bathrooms that are wet rooms, and suddenly you could sell your house for more because people actually want that kind of bathroom.
I think language is a big part of this conversation too. If we stopped calling them accessible showers or curbless showers and called them Euro showers, everybody would want one.
Yeah.
It's just the concept that it creates in your mind about what it possibly is. So if you're doing a renovation, and I realize a bathroom renovation can go from, inexpensive to really expensive in a heartbeat, depending on a lot of the choices you make. But for somebody who's looking at doing a renovation to an existing bathroom and they need a curbless shower, what area do you think they should be looking at in general for money?
On average, I would say about $30,000.
Okay.
Yeah. So again, you're right though. It does depend. $30,000 is the number I would use for completely gutting the bathroom. So we're starting with a bathroom that's big enough to be able to convert into the wet room. But you're basically taking out, it might have a tub and a small shower, let's say it's separate tub and small shower.
And vanity and toilet, the whole 9 yards. Take it all out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Take it all out, completely redo the floor system, the wall system, all waterproof, new sink and vanity, new toilet, and then your shower area. $30,000 is something you shouldn't be shocked about.
That is not hugely more expensive than doing a traditional bathroom renovation.
I don't think so. I mean, I haven't done a traditional one. So, I suspect it's about $30,000 if you got any bathroom and redo it all, right? Whether it's a shower area or not. So, again, a lot of people just don't have that kind of money. So that's when they do start entertaining the idea of just taking the bathtub out and putting in a shower unit, right? That would have maybe a 1-inch curb on it, that kind of thing. I've even seen something where you can cut out a notch in your existing bathtub, and you effectively convert your bathtub into a shower, right? Because it can't fill up anymore. So you just have this opening on the side of your bathtub. Yikes. And it can be done, in a day. You can get these things where you can take your tub out and put in a shower unit for within a day as well, right? So there's these very simple, probably less than $5,000 to do, but that's certainly not. That might effectively help you right now, but that's not a future.
It's not curbless either. I mean, it's going to have an acrylic.
No, it's not.
Base
No, it's not curbless at all.
Right.
No. So if you're in a wheelchair, it's just like it's a no starter for you. You have to think about something else. Yeah. And yeah, for sure.
Allow me to point out too that a lot of the people that I deal with, and I'm sure a lot of the people that you deal with, are people who have something happen to them. They fall and they break a hip. They have a car accident. Something happens, and they've been to the hospital, now they're in rehab, but they cannot go home until they can get in and out of their house and until they have a bathroom that they can use to clean themselves. So that's when
Right.
you end up with the ramps outside that nobody really wants to see, and that's when you end up with bathrooms that look institutional. So for any of our
That's right.
listeners who are listening to this podcast, if you are considering doing a bathroom renovation, please, please, please think long term. Think about what your needs may be, even if you don't see it now. You don't know what's coming 10, 20, 30 years down the road. And if you intend to stay in that house, make sure it's a house that you can age in or that your disease can progress in and keep you safe.
Yeah. And having said all of that too, I just can't help but think that this is where the government should be supporting people too. So everything we're talking about is, given the fact that you have some income or some money to spend, right? But many people just simply don't have the funding to allow them to do that. And there should be some help from government. The government certainly is helpful when it comes to energy retrofits to a home. So they should be able to do this with issues around aging in place and accessibility as well, right? And somehow it just doesn't seem to gain the same attention. But again, a $30,000 renovation to a bathroom is almost not doable for many people in our population, and so they just do whatever they can to make it work. But it just doesn't work, as well as it could, right? And in some respects, it just doesn't work at all. But you just learn to live with something that's your normal. You don't know what it could be like, right?
Right.
And I, to a certain extent, I experienced that with my dad. And the interesting thing about my father was, I mean, he had money to renovate his home. He just chose not to do it, right? So he, as a person who was paraplegic, he used a bathtub for most of his life in his wheelchair. So it was only until he started getting close to 60 that he realized getting in and out of the bathtub without his ability to use his legs just became impossible,
Right.
and he would need help. So the alternative all of a sudden became, well, I can get a lift. I can get a ceiling lift and it can pick me up from my wheelchair, plump me into the bathtub, pick me up again. Or I can add on to my house, which is a much better option, and have this nice shower area. And I like to share that story with other people because even my father, who spent 40 years in a wheelchair, was stubborn about this change. And didn't think it would really be as beneficial. And even when his own son and only son was telling him, Dad, this is going to work. This is going to be really good for you.
Right.
He needed to actually experience it for himself. And the day he had his shower from his wheelchair, his shower wheelchair, he was like, I should have been doing this 30 years ago.
Shoulda, woulda, coulda.
And maybe my shoulders wouldn't be in the condition they're in now, right?
Right.
And I'm like, if I could only relay that to somebody today that's in their 20s and tell them that story, share that story with them so that they understand and appreciate that maybe I should listen to this architect guy and, and follow through, right? So, it's hard sometimes to communicate to people what the benefits are, and sometimes they just simply have to experience it for themselves. But it is hard, and especially if you're of a low income, the options become so limited.
Right. Let's end the podcast with another story that I know you have about somebody who experienced a tremendous decline in the amount of time they had to spend in their bathroom after they got it renovated. I like that story, and I think it will speak to a lot of people.
Yeah, this is one that is a particular individual that I worked with, but it's a story that many of my clients have shared with me, and in this case, it was a client, and she was diagnosed with ALS. This is many years ago now, and she was lucky enough and fortunate enough to live, I think, 12 years after being diagnosed with ALS, which is long.
Long time, yeah.
Usually you're given about 2 years window, and some people live, quite a bit longer. But that's the reality you face when you get diagnosed with ALS. And her and her husband asked me to look at their house. And at the time, they didn't even know if they should renovate their house or just buy a lot and build something new. And after about a half an hour of talking to them and looking at their house, I saw a very simple solution to their existing house. And that was just to add on to the side of it. And we were able to make an addition that provided her with an elevator and extra space in her master bedroom and the ability to create a larger bathroom. And so very simple, cost-effective renovation that worked really well for them. And then she wrote to me later, talked about what a huge difference it made in her life. And I'll read what she wrote here. It's just a couple of sentences, but she said the elevator gave us ready access from the street, the garage, the main floor, and the upstairs. So it was a 2-story house. Another benefit of a barrier-free layout was the daily tasks like showering could be accomplished with less effort and in less time. A simple thing like having space for both wheelchair and caregiver in the bathroom simplified many personal care routines. Having a well-designed home base to deal with basic needs freed up more energy for work and play. And it really struck me. And later on, the city of Edmonton used to have an awards program called the Mayor's Awards for Accessible Architecture, and this house won an award. And she did a little speech, and she became very tearful in talking about how this experience of just being able to have a quick bathroom routine allowed her to spend more time with her kids and her husband, which she cherished, right? And I can only imagine what that would be like for somebody that every day now is waking up going, I don't know how much more time I have left, right? I mean, most of us don't really think about that, but she had to. That's the reality she faced. And just being able to get ready for the day in a quicker and more convenient, easier, safer way must make that morning so much better and allow her to have that energy to deal with the rest of the day in a much more positive way. So, again, it's not... They picked very expensive Italian fixtures. They had a very nice house. All of that stuff is nice, but nothing compared to the ability to have this time, right? And that's what we really cherish. So that really has a strong effect on myself as a designer, and certainly a story I like to share with other designers and sort of encourage them to take on projects like this as worthy of their attention.
Well, that's a really good story to end with. And you can't buy time, and your quality of life is everything. So, folks, we have talked about the history of accessibility. We have talked about what Ron looks for in terms of finding a house that is easily renovated for people. And then we've done shorter podcasts on the no-step entry, vertical movement inside the house, and today's, which was a bit longer, on bathrooms, but so much information there for everybody. And I would like to thank Ron for taking the time to do these podcasts with me and for you. It's been quite an experience. So I invite you to go back and listen to all of the podcasts that Ron and I have done together. And I'm sure that in the future we will do more. But until the next time, thank you all for listening, and we look forward to seeing you again. Real Life Renos, the podcast, is a production of Reno Studios, executive produced by Karen Brown. This is Real Life theme, music, and lyrics by Jane Carmichael, recorded at Swamp Songs Recording Studio in Lucan, Ontario, engineered by Matt Weston. Thank you for tuning in.